Hi, and welcome to English-Fabule. Are you learning English? Great. Let's learn English with a very interesting story. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Let's get started.
On Friday, November 7, 2025, President Donald Trump met with Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán at the White House. Both leaders saw this as a very important meeting for the relationship between the United States and Hungary. Prime Minister Orbán traveled to Washington with a large group. His delegation included 180 government officials, business leaders, and other important people. They came from Hungary to talk about a serious problem. The most important item for Prime Minister Orbán was to get an exception from new U.S. rules. The United States had just put new sanctions on Russia's two biggest oil companies, Rosneft and Lukoil, in October 2025. These sanctions were a strong move by President Trump's government to put pressure on Russia's energy sector. The new rules said that any foreign company or country that continued to buy oil from these Russian companies could face penalties. Hungary relies heavily on Russian energy. About 74% of its natural gas and 86% of its oil come from Russia. Because of this, the new U.S. sanctions created a very big economic challenge for Hungary. Officials from Hungary warned that if they had to stop buying Russian energy, the cost of gas and electricity for people would increase by more than double. This could lead to a big economic crisis for the country. So, the discussions between President Trump and Prime Minister Orbán at the White House were extremely important. The future of Hungary's economy depended on these talks. 2. The big meeting. President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Viktor Orbán sat down for a lunch meeting in the White House Cabinet Room. This was a very important meeting. President Trump listened carefully and showed that he understood Hungary's difficult situation. President Trump knew that Hungary faced different challenges than other countries in Europe. He said, "Hungary is a landlocked country. This means it has no coast or seaports. Because of this, it is very hard for Hungary to bring in oil and gas from other parts of the world by ships. They mostly rely on pipelines that come across land." President Trump explained to reporters later that Hungary has a difficult problem because they don't have sea. They don't have the ports. He stressed that Hungary's geography makes its energy needs very specific. After the meeting, the White House made a big announcement. The United States agreed to let Hungary have a special exemption. This exemption would last for 1 year. It meant Hungary did not have to follow the new U.S. sanctions on Russian oil. These sanctions were strong and aimed at stopping countries from buying Russian oil. Giving Hungary this 1-year pass was a major change. Hungarian officials were very pleased with the outcome. Hungarian Foreign Minister Péter Szijjártó spoke to the media. He called the agreement a major achievement for Hungary. He said it was a full and unlimited exemption from the sanctions on Russian oil and gas. This meant Hungary could continue to receive oil through important pipelines, such as the Druzhba and Turkstream pipelines, without punishment from the U.S. For the Hungarian government, this was seen as a great victory. It helped to protect their country's economy and energy supply. 3. More than just oil. The big meeting between President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Viktor Orban led to more than just the oil agreement. The two leaders spoke about many other ways their countries could work together. This new partnership would help both the United States and Hungary in important areas like energy, defense, and even space. A key part of the New Deal was about energy. Hungary made a promise to buy a large amount of natural gas from the United States. This gas, known as LNG, would be worth about $600 million over the coming years. This was an important step for Hungary to get its energy from more different sources. It also meant new business for American energy companies. Both leaders saw this as a win. Cooperation in nuclear energy was also a big topic. The United States agreed to remove some old rules from the previous administration. These rules had affected Hungary's POX-2 nuclear power project. Now, Hungary could move forward with this important project for its electricity. Washington and Budapest also signed a special agreement to work together on civil nuclear power. This included plans for new, smaller nuclear reactors. It also covered how to store nuclear waste safely. These plans could involve large investments, possibly up to $20 billion. Additionally, Hungary signed a contract worth $114 million with an American company, Westinghouse, to get nuclear fuel for its older POX-1 power plant. Military cooperation between the two nations also grew stronger. They started talks to update an important agreement about sharing military secrets and information. This would allow for a deeper partnership in defense matters. Hungary also announced that it planned to buy new military equipment from the United States. These defense items would be bought through a U.S. program and would cost around $700 million. This showed a stronger bond in security between the two countries. Finally, a new partnership in space exploration was announced. Just before the meeting, Hungary signed the Artemis Accords. This is an international agreement for countries to explore space peacefully and openly. As part of this commitment, Hungarian companies will have a chance to help build the world's first commercial space station. This big project is led by an American company and is expected to launch in 2029. These diverse agreements show a broad effort to build stronger ties between the United States and Hungary. 4. Two friendly leaders. The meeting between President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Viktor Orban was notable for a strong personal connection. Both leaders showed great respect for each other during their discussions. This good relationship was clear for everyone to see. President Donald Trump often spoke highly of Prime Minister Orban. He called Orban a great leader, not just once, but many times. Trump also shared that he liked and respected the Hungarian leader very much. A key part of their friendly talks was about immigration. President Trump openly praised Hungary's strict rules on who can enter the country. He described these policies as fantastic and very effective. Trump suggested that other nations in Europe could learn from Hungary's approach to borders. He pointed out that some countries in Europe had changed a lot due to different policies. But Hungary, Trump said, still felt very much like itself and was very recognizable. Prime Minister Orbán, in turn, spoke about a good time for the two nations. He called this period a golden age for the relationship between the United States and Hungary. He felt this new positive era was largely thanks to President Donald Trump's return to leadership. Orbán also mentioned that Trump was willing to correct the missteps that had happened before. This meant fixing things that were not right in the past. After the meeting, President Trump spoke to other European leaders. He told them that Hungary and Prime Minister Orbán should receive more international respect. He stressed this point especially when talking about their strong immigration policies. The personal bond and mutual admiration between President Trump and Prime Minister Orbán played a big part in the friendly atmosphere of their White House meeting. 5. A country with no sea. The special agreement between President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Viktor Orbán was based on a key idea: Hungary's geography. President Trump often spoke about Hungary being a landlocked country. This means it has no direct access to the sea. He explained that because Hungary lacks seaports, it is difficult for ships to bring in oil and natural gas. This geographic situation, he argued, made Hungary's energy needs very different from other European nations. At the time, Hungary received about 86% of its oil and 74% of its natural gas from Russia. Officials in Hungary warned that if they stopped buying Russian energy, the cost of heating and electricity for families could become 2 or 3 times higher. Prime Minister Orbán even said this could lead to a serious economic crisis in his country. However, not everyone agreed that Hungary's problem was only about geography. Some critics said Hungary did have other choices for oil. They often mentioned the Adria pipeline. This pipeline starts on the Adriatic coast in Croatia and can transport non-Russian crude oil directly to Hungary's main refinery, called Százhalombatta. Daniel Fried, who used to be a United States ambassador, strongly disagreed with Orbán's claims. He stated that Hungary was not truly without options. Fried believed that Hungary's reliance on Russian energy was a deliberate policy choice made by its government, not an unavoidable situation. He suggested that Hungary chose to favor Russian suppliers instead of actively looking for other solutions. To support this view, critics often looked at Poland. Poland is another country in Central Europe that is also landlocked, just like Hungary. Yet, Poland successfully reduced how much it depended on Russian energy. Poland invested many years and a lot of money in building new infrastructure. They developed new ways to get oil and gas from other countries. For example, Poland built liquefied natural gas (LNG) terminals, allowing them to import gas by sea even without their own oil. Poland's success shows that with strong political will and smart investments, a landlocked country can indeed find different energy sources. So, a big question came up. Was Hungary's need for Russian oil a real problem caused by its location, or was it a political decision? President Trump often highlighted the geographic challenge, showing understanding for Hungary's situation. But the evidence of the Adria pipeline and Poland's actions suggested that Hungary had more control over its energy choices than was often presented. The New Deal, which included Hungary buying American natural gas, hinted that finding alternatives was possible all along. This discussion showed that Hungary's energy future was not just about where it is on the map, but also about the choices its leaders make. 6. Talking about Ukraine. During the meeting, President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Viktor Orban also talked a lot about the war in Ukraine. This conflict is very important for Europe and the world. President Donald Trump had planned a special meeting in October. He wanted to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Budapest, Hungary. Prime Minister Orban had said that Hungary would be happy to host this important peace summit. However, President Trump later canceled the meeting. He felt frustrated because Russia was not willing to agree to stop fighting. He thought that talking would not help if Russia did not want a ceasefire. President Trump asked Prime Minister Orban a direct question about the war. He asked if Ukraine could win. Prime Minister Orban replied, "You know, a miracle can happen." This answer showed that he did not believe Ukraine had a good chance to win the war. President Trump seemed to agree with this view. He said that he thought the war would end soon. He also noted that Russia was still strong in its fight. Prime Minister Orban made it clear that peace in Ukraine was very important for Hungary. He told President Trump that Hungary wanted to help bring peace to the region. He offered Hungary's support for President Trump's efforts to mediate and find a way to stop the fighting. This discussion about Ukraine was a central part of the leaders' talks. The agreement on Russian oil for Hungary also had effects on the Ukraine situation. Some people worried that letting Hungary keep buying Russian oil could weaken the unity of countries against Russia. It also meant that money from these oil sales could still go to Russia, which helps Russia's war efforts. This decision placed Ukraine in a difficult position. Even as the war continued, Russian oil was still flowing through Ukrainian territory to Hungary. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky had already stated that Ukraine would work to stop Russian oil sales to Hungary in the future. The conversation between President Trump and Prime Minister Orban highlighted their shared focus on bringing an end to the conflict. 7. A new alliance. The deal between the United States and Hungary was more than just about oil and gas. It showed a new way politics in Western countries could change. This agreement affected many important things, from how countries work together to fight Russia to how the European Union makes decisions. First, the deal could make the group of Western countries less strong against Russia. The U.S. gave Hungary a special permission to keep buying Russian oil. This happened even when the U.S. had new sanctions on Russian oil companies. For a long time, Western countries tried to work together to stop Russia. They wanted to reduce the money Russia got from selling energy. This money helped Russia pay for its war in Ukraine. The decision to let Hungary buy Russian oil might make other countries think that the West is not fully united. It could also make Russia think that the U.S. president is not completely firm on his sanctions. This might reduce Russia's reason to negotiate seriously for peace. It weakens the idea of a united front that had been forming. Second, this special deal for Hungary might make other countries in Europe want their own special deals. If one country can get an exemption from sanctions, why not others? This could lead to countries breaking away from the main group. They might try to make their own agreements with the U.S. instead of working as part of a larger team like the European Union. This would weaken the idea of European unity and make it harder for Europe to act as one strong voice on the world stage. Third, the deal could hurt the unity of the European Union. Hungary, led by Prime Minister Orbán, has often disagreed with other EU countries. Hungary has used its power to stop important EU decisions about Russia and Ukraine. The U.S. president's strong support for Orbán might make Hungary feel even more confident to go against the EU's common plans. This could make it harder for the EU to make important decisions, especially about big issues like the war in Ukraine. It could cause more division among European countries at a time when unity is very important. This might lead to an uneven approach to foreign policy within the EU. Finally, the deal raises questions about the NATO alliance. NATO is a military group where countries promise to protect each other if one is attacked. Countries that are close to Russia, like Poland or the Baltic states, depend on NATO for their safety. When the U.S., a very important NATO member, makes a special deal with a country like Hungary, a country that sometimes acts against NATO's common goals, it can make others worry. These border countries might wonder how strong and reliable NATO's promise of protection really is. They might think that individual countries can get special treatment from the U.S. This could make them less sure about trusting the whole alliance to act together. Some might even start thinking about making their own deals with Russia to ensure their safety, rather than relying only on NATO's collective defense. This agreement shows that old alliances and ways of working together might be changing significantly. It asks if countries will still act as one group, or if they will start to focus more on their own separate interests. The deal could start a new period in how Western politics works, making the future less clear for unity and cooperation against common threats. It changes how people see the strength and reliability of Western alliances, especially for countries on Russia's border. 8. What happens next? The deal between the United States and Hungary creates many important questions for the future. In Hungary, there are big worries about democracy and human rights. For over 15 years, Prime Minister Viktor Orbán has been in power. During this time, international groups like Freedom House say that Hungary's democracy has become weaker. They have seen changes in election rules that help Orbán's party. Also, many news companies are now owned by people close to the government, making it hard for independent news to be heard. Even judges may feel pressure to agree with the government. President Donald Trump, however, did not speak about these concerns during his meeting with Orbán. Instead, he praised Orbán many times, calling him a great leader. Trump said that he liked Orbán's strong control and suggested other European countries should follow Hungary's example, especially on immigration. This way of speaking is very different from what the U.S. usually does when talking about human rights with other countries. It makes some people wonder if Trump values leaders who share his ideas more than he values strong democratic rules. For Ukraine, the deal creates a very difficult situation. Hungary can still buy Russian oil. This Russian oil travels through the Druzhba pipeline, which crosses Ukrainian land. This means that even as war continues, money from oil sales flows from Russia through Ukraine to a country that is part of the NATO alliance. Ukraine has to make sure this pipeline is safe, but Hungary has often shown little support for Ukraine in the war. President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that Ukraine will try to stop Russian oil from being sold to Hungary. This shows how complicated and unfair the situation is for Ukraine. There are also questions about corruption in Hungary. Many reports show that corruption is a big problem there. Money that should go to public projects sometimes ends up helping people who are friends with Orbán's government. The new agreements like buying American natural gas, working together on nuclear energy, and buying military equipment involve a lot of money. People are asking if these big deals will truly benefit all of Hungary or mostly help a small group of rich people connected to the government. This is an important question, especially because Hungary will have new elections in 2026. The agreement between the U.S. and Hungary raises major questions for all of Europe and the Western world. One question is about unity. Should all NATO countries always agree on one plan, even if it causes economic problems for one country with special geographic conditions? Or should a country's leader always put their own citizens' money and well-being first? Another question is about democracy. What does Donald Trump's strong support for Orbán's way of governing mean for how other Western countries practice democracy? Will it change how leaders act? A third question is for Russia. How will President Putin understand this special deal for Hungary? Will he think that Western countries are not truly united and strong against Russia with sanctions? A fourth question asks how we can ensure that the money from these new energy and military deals helps all people in Hungary, not just a few powerful people. Finally, does this deal make Ukraine's position weaker in any future peace talks because it shows that the U.S. might be willing to make deals that help Russian interests? These are all big and complex questions that will shape the future of Europe and the West in the coming months and years. What do you think is the most important question this deal makes us ask?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.